The stagecoach door creaked open, spilling a young woman into the dust as though the desert itself had chosen to spit her out. Clara Mae Dalton clutched a faded satchel to her chest, her boots sinking in the packed earth of the depot road. The sun bled into the horizon, painting her shadow long and thin, like something fragile trying to stretch itself into permanence. Folks leaned from porches and railings, their eyes sharpening. News had traveled fast on the wind. She was the bride who had refused Hiram Boone. Boone himself stood at the edge of the station platform, his face red with humiliation, his guts straining against a fine waistcoat. He looked her up and down as if she were no more than a stray mutt that had embarrassed him by running from the hand that promised scraps. "Ungrateful girl," he spat, his voice carrying, meant for every ear in town. "Best hope you find shelter among coyotes, for no decent soul will take you in." The words stung, though Clara had prepared herself for them. Still, shame burned her cheeks as laughter rippled from the crowd. Martha Higgins, wrapped in black shawls despite the heat, whispered to the woman beside her with lips pursed sharp as sewing needles. The judgment landed heavier than the satchel in Clara's arms. She turned away, her throat tight, walking toward nowhere in particular. Dust rose with every step, stinging her eyes, blurring the edges of the street. She wondered how far a girl could walk before the desert swallowed her whole. It was then she saw him. Nantan Yazzie stood outside the general store, tall as a cottonwood against the dying sky. His hair was black as crow feathers, braided down his back. His chest and shoulders filled the doorway, and though he said nothing, silence bent itself around him. Men avoided his gaze. Women clutched their children closer when he passed. He was both a presence and a question, and no one in town had ever dared to answer him. Clara slowed, unsure why his dark eyes lingered on her, why his stillness felt like attention rather than indifference. He carried his purchases, flour, salt, beans, and walked toward his horse tethered at the hitching post. He moved without hurry, each step deliberate, as though the world had no right to rush him. By nightfall, Clara found herself sitting on the depot bench, hunger gnawing sharp as teeth. She had no plan except to endure the dark. The street lamps sputtered, the town quieted, and then the shadow returned. The giant Apache, reins looped in one hand, his horse snorting softly at his side. "You need work." His voice was deep, steady, without accusation. Clara startled, clutching her satchel tighter. "Ah, yes, sir. For a night, perhaps." He studied her for a long beat, the silence heavy but not cruel. Finally, he nodded once. "Cook supper." One night, relief flooded her. She rose quickly, trailing him as he mounted his horse. He did not offer her the saddle, but walked the animal slow so she might keep pace on foot. The moon climbed, silvering the desert scrub. Her steps felt endless, yet she feared no exhaustion, only the return to town. The ranch appeared as a dark silhouette at the edge of the world. Low house, corrals, smokehouse leaning against the wind. The scent of sage and wood smoke lingered. Inside, the walls breathed warmth, firelight flickering across simple furnishings worn smooth by use. He introduced himself with no ceremony. "Nantan Yazzie, Clara Mae Dalton." She answered, her voice quiet. From a back room came the quick patter of small feet, and a girl burst forth, hair in tangles, eyes bright. "Papa," she chirped before freezing at the sight of Clara. "This is Ruthie," Nantan said. Clara knelt, setting her satchel down. "Hello, Ruthie." The girl tilted her head. "Are you the new cook?" Clara hesitated, then smiled faintly. "For tonight." Ruthie giggled and clapped her hands, then darted back toward her room as if the matter were settled. Clara found the kitchen sparse, but manageable. She worked quickly, kneading dough with flour-streaked hands, stirring beans into a stew that hissed and bubbled. Her arms ached, but she welcomed the ache. It meant she was still needed somewhere. They ate at the table together, fire casting long shadows across the walls. Nantan ate in silence, movements slow, deliberate. Ruthie filled the air with chatter, asking Clara about her dress, about where she came from, about whether she could braid hair as well as her mama once did. Clara answered gently, careful not to reveal the wounds of her journey. When Ruthie laughed too hard at a silly joke, Clara caught Nantan watching, his eyes unreadable but softer than before. When Clara set her spoon down, he pushed the bread plate nearer, a quiet insistence that she take more. Small gestures, but she noticed each one. After supper, she gathered dishes, washing them in a tin basin. Ruthie brought a stool, insisting on helping. Together, they hummed tunelessly, the simple rhythm of work easing the sharpness of the day. From the doorway, Nantan stood, arms crossed, gaze steady, as if committing the scene to memory. When Ruthie's hair tangled in soap bubbles, Clara laughed, a clear sound she had not heard from her own mouth in weeks. Ruthie joined, their laughter mingling, rising like fragile birds. Clara caught Nantan's silhouette in the firelight. For the first time, he looked less like a giant and more like a man carrying his own silence. Later, when Ruthie was tucked into bed, Clara prepared to leave, slipping her satchel over her shoulder. She whispered thanks for the meal, for the kindness, and made for the door. But Ruthie's small voice stopped her. "Papa," she murmured sleepily from her room. "Can she stay forever?" The words froze Clara where she stood. Nanan did not answer immediately. He remained in the shadows of the hall, his profile carved from firelight and darkness. His silence stretched long, heavy with thought. Clara's breath caught, the question hanging in the air like smoke refusing to rise. And though he said nothing, though his face revealed no decision, Clara felt the weight of that silence settle deep inside her, as if the answer, unspoken, had already begun to change her fate. Morning light spilled across the desert, gold and merciless, and Clara rose to its summons. The one-night cook had not gone. Instead, she found herself stacking kindling by the hearth, mending a tear in Ruthie's dress, fetching water from the well. Each task stretched her stay by invisible threads. She told herself it was only until she earned enough to move on, but her hands lingered too long in the rhythm of belonging. Nantan spoke little, yet his silences changed shape. At first, they were barriers walls high and unyielding. But as days turned, they softened, carrying a quiet acknowledgement. She would step outside to find what already split, a sharpened knife left by the table, her washed apron folded neatly. The language between them was not in words, but in gestures, mutual, deliberate, impossible to mistake. Ruthie became the eager bridge. She slipped her small hand into Clara's when they walked to feed the hens, tug her close to read by lamplight, ask questions Clara sometimes could not answer. "Were you lonely before?" the child asked one evening, head tilted. Clara paused too long, and Ruthie filled the silence with her own certainty. "I think you were. Papa was too." In town, whispers tightened like ropes around Clara's name. Martha Higgins clucked her tongue outside the mercantile, declaring, "Better a widow than a girl who refuses her rightful match, only to warm herself in a savage's home." Men smirked. Women whispered. Clara heard the words as she collected flour, each syllable a reminder of her exile. She lowered her gaze, but shame pricked her skin as if needles had sewn it into her flesh. That night, while kneading dough, she asked softly, "Do you hear what they say of me?" Nantan lifted his eyes. Firelight etched the strength in his jaw, the steadiness of his gaze. "I hear," he said simply. "Does it not matter to you?" He shook his head once. "Truth is not theirs to carry." The answer steadied her like a hand placed firm on her back. But Hiram Boone's bitterness did not die so easily. His pride festered in saloons and alleys, his laughter brittle as glass when others mentioned her name. "The girl was promised to me," he muttered, drink staining his breath. "No Apache will keep what's mine." The sting of rejection grew sharp, curdling into vengeance. Clara sensed his shadow before she saw it. On market day, she caught his reflection in the mercantile's window, eyes narrow, mouth twisted. He said nothing, but the look promised something darker than words. Fear lodged itself in her chest, though she hid it from Ruthie. For a moment, Clara considered leaving. She packed her satchel one night, hands trembling as she folded the few clothes she had. Yet Ruthie woke, rubbing her eyes, and whispered, "Don't go, Clara. Mama left already. Don't you leave us too." The child's plea broke something inside her. She set the satchel down. The storm came on a night thick with clouds. Wind rattled shutters, rain spit against the windows, and the world felt on edge. Clara tucked Ruthie into bed, humming low when hooves thundered outside. She froze, the sound too many for a friendly visit. Nantan opened the door before the knock landed. 3 figures loomed. Hiram Boone at the front, his bulk framed by lamplight, pistol heavy at his side. 2 ranch hands flanked him, drunk with malice and whiskey. "Evening, Yazzie," Boone drawled, venom slick on his tongue. "I've come for what's mine. The girl was meant for me." Clara clutched Ruthie's shoulder, pulling her close. Shame and terror warred inside her. She had thought rejection was the end, but now she saw it was only the beginning. Nantan stood unmoving in the doorway, the storm behind Boone tossing rain like knives. His height filled the frame, his silence weightier than threats. "She is not yours," he said at last, voice low measured. Boone sneered, spittle gathering in the corners of his mouth. "You think she belongs to you? An Apache, stealing what he wants. The town will burn you for this." He stepped forward, hand reaching for Clara's arm. Her heart stuttered, her body stiff with fear. Ruthie whimpered. Before Boone could touch her, Clara found her voice, trembling but sharp. "I will not go with you." The declaration hung in the air, fragile but true. Boone laughed, cruel and loud, then jerked the pistol from his belt. "Then you'll be dragged." Ruthie cried out, clutching Clara's skirts. Nantan moved in that instant, swift as lightning tearing the sky. His hand closed around Boone's wrist, twisting until the gun clattered into the mud outside. The other men shifted, but one look from Nantan, one look of iron resolve, froze them where they stood. "Leave," Nantan said. It was not a threat, but a sentence. Boone snarled, humiliated, nursing his twisted wrist. Rain plastered his hair to his face, washing streaks of dirt across his cheeks. For a heartbeat, he looked less like a rancher and more like a wounded beast. "This isn't over," he spat, retreating into the storm. The others followed, muttering curses swallowed by the rain. When the door shut, silence rushed in, broken only by Ruthie's soft sobs. Clara knelt, gathering the child in her arms, whispering comfort, though her own chest still heaved with terror. She felt the warmth of Nantan near her, his presence steady as stone. Later, when Ruthie finally slept, Clara sat by the fire, hands trembling in her lap. Nantan lowered himself onto the bench beside her, close enough that she felt the heat of him. He did not speak, but after a long moment, his hand rested near hers, so near that the air between their fingers seemed to hum. Clara turned her palm slightly, almost brushing his. The gesture was small, hesitant, but in it lay all the weight of the night. The danger faced, the fear endured, the courage found. She met his eyes, and in their dark depths she saw not silence, but recognition. Outside, the storm raged on, wind howling through the desert like a wounded thing. But inside, in the circle of firelight, a new stillness settled. Clara knew the world would not forgive easily, that whispers would grow sharper, that Boone's spite had not ended. Yet for the first time, she felt a ground beneath her feet that no gossip could erode. The flames crackled, shadows swayed across the walls. Nantan's hand remained close, steady, waiting. Clara exhaled, the breath shuddering, then let her fingers shift just enough to graze his. It was nothing. It was everything. And in that quiet contact, she realized the question Ruthie had asked was no longer a child's wish, but a truth demanding an answer.